This week it's a look back at Click's Summer of Sport with cars, balls, bikes and bots.
The seconds wound down before the start.
And we'll start with our trip to F1 from July, which has been at the cutting edge of technology and design since its creation in 1946.
Welcome to the pit.
Every year, teams compete fiercely to outdo each other in aerodynamics, data communications and materials, all with one aim: to make their cars go really, really fast.
And they do a really good job of making them that, as we are finding out here at the Austrian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton's ride.
What's even more impressive is that this whole show is permanently on the road, with car, teams, engineers and scientists moving from country to country and track to track.
Now these are the most expensive motorhomes I've ever seen. Each one of these is a lorry and they just drive them to the next Formula One, stick them together, zip, 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 and that's Ferrari's office for the length of the race. Mercedes are the current world champions, and like every other team here, they spend millions on their car and developing the technology that will hopefully win them the race. But what you see at any Grand Prix is just the tip of the iceberg. It takes hundreds of people to develop that technology. So we sent Lara Lewington to Mercedes HQ to find out what really goes into winning a race.
Away from the track, the people, the preparation, the planning and the precision are pivotal.
Hi, I'm Lara Lewington from the BBC.
Hello, can I just put security stickers on your phone?
Of course, no problem. So we're allowed to film here, but I mustn't take any pictures on my phone. There's clearly a lot at stake here, so it's no surprise that Formula One is notoriously secretive. But today, we've got some behind-the-scenes access.
This business is big bucks, and millimetres and milliseconds matter.
This is last year's winning car. In fact, it hasn't even been cleaned since its last race in Abu Dhabi. But the thing that is most striking standing here next to it is the amount of detail there is everywhere throughout the car. And after each race, if there's something they're not happy with, it can be perfected. Well, this was a winning car last year, so clearly it's been very successful, but you're obviously not happy with it because you're working on a new one. So what do you think needs to be improved?
We're never happy with it, as you say. This is Lewis's car from last year. It was the first car we made on the back of a really big regulation change. We worked really hard on all those little small bits you see around the car, which is all the aerodynamic bits and pieces.
It seems to be made up of lots of little small bits.
Yeah, every little bit has a job. When we put it into the wind tunnel, each one is all about optimising the airflow around the car. What we're not happy with a little bit is, because we focus so much on that, we now need to do a lot on the packaging internally to make it much tighter. The tighter you get it, again, the better you can get the aerodynamics around the car.
The operation here goes way beyond the car itself, though.
Welcome to the race support room. When a race is actually on, 60 members of the team are allowed to be at the track. So this provides the opportunity for more people to be looking at the data and making sure that vital advice can be provided. Now on these screens, they'll be looking at a feed from the race. They'll also be looking at feeds from within the drivers' cars, plus all the vital data that they want to act on. And if they want to communicate, well, they simply do it through a pair of these.
Lap times, GPS data, everything can be tracked and analysed here, where 5,000 different data points are being assessed. Information from races in Europe taking just 0.1 of a second to reach here, or 0.4 if the data is coming from Australia. Meanwhile, this lot are busy practising at speed. Over 250 of these trials take place ahead of the season. They make it look easy, but inevitably it's not, as I can tell you firsthand.
Oh, oh no! So loud and it's meant to be so quick, but I clearly wasn't. Meanwhile, Spencer's already living life in the fast lane.
Thank you, Lara. And by the way, this is how you really do it.
This year, Mercedes has got its pit stop down to an incredible 1.85 seconds. Now, that's quicker than it takes to say 1.85 seconds. It's a finely tuned operation that the engineers practice over and over in the days before each race.
It's a bit of a ballet, and the ergonomics is quite important because it's 20-odd people around the car trying to do a job in 2 seconds. And if you start banging into people, then you're losing half a second, and then the strategists can't get their numbers right, and then you don't get the position you need.
The human element to this ultra-fast manoeuvre is accompanied by technology individually developed by each team. Even the hydraulically powered wheel guns are a closely guarded secret.
And I hear they're quite expensive.
They are expensive and they have a life because they run an awful lot of pressure. So we're changing the internals a great deal.
Do I hear about £30,000 each?
I wouldn't know the exact cost, but that sounds quite low to me.
Right, we're going into Mercedes garage now.
Keeping the pit crew safe is of utmost importance. These lights, for example, let the crew know if the cars have become electrified, stopping them from getting more than a nasty shock. And then there's what goes into the cars, or more specifically, what comes out of the cars, which is monitored by trackside labs and high-end scientific equipment.
Between every session, the cars are given the equivalent of a blood test. The oil and the fuel is taken to see if it's contaminated, and that might give you a clue as to the state of the engine. And that is done in the fuel lab.
The oil is put into a spectrometer which tests for different metals in the fluid. The amount of a specific metal present can reveal if a particular part of the engine is degrading too quickly. And next in our Summer of Sport special, we're going from F1 to the World Cup. That's in a couple of ticks.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week that Facebook signed an exclusive deal with La Liga to show every game for 3 seasons. The deal covers several countries, including India and Pakistan. And a group of 10 current and former Tinder staff are suing the company for $2 billion, accusing them of undervaluing the dating app and cheating them out of company stock. The company have responded by calling the claims meritless. And while last week conspiracy theorist Alex Jones may have avoided a Twitter ban, he has now been blocked by the social media company from posting for a week. The InfoWars host won't be able to interact with anyone during the suspension, but his previous tweets will still be visible. It was also the week that the first ever birth control app was approved by the Food and Drug Administration in America. Natural Cycles, which is currently under investigation in Sweden due to alleged misleading claims over its accuracy, was given the all-clear to market itself as a contraceptive in America. And a study by Moorfields Eye Hospital and Google's DeepMind found that AI could diagnose eye disease as accurately as leading experts. Trained on thousands of scans, it's hoped the algorithm will be able to flag and refer urgent cases and ease the burden on clinicians. And finally, I'll leave you with the disembodied head of Thomas the Tank Engine with a 3D printed body coded to sing karaoke. Enjoy.
And next up in our celebration of sport, Jen Copestake gets her boots on.
He may not look like much, but RoboKeeper can stop Manchester's best players.
His
His 2 cameras take up to 90 photos per second. If a football is kicked up to 100 kilometers an hour, that leaves RoboKeeper just 0.3 seconds to save the ball. There are some great facilities in Manchester, as you might expect from one of the world's great footballing cities.
Normally, practice requires a pitch, loads of players to set up the drills, and footballs. But what if you could bring all of this into your living room?
We've come to Salford City Football Ground to be put through our paces with the latest in virtual reality. First, collecting data with StatSports, they are working at the World Cup with 8 national teams, including England. Using a heart rate monitor and a GPS device fixed between our shoulder blades, we are sent for a run to collect data points. Virtual reality platform MiHyper Sports transforms this data into VR amazingly quickly.
That position that you were running, we've offset it back onto the pitch.
Wow.
So as we're moving forward, if we're streaming that data live from the GPS vest, we'll be able to stream it live into this platform. So theoretically, if you were going in at half-time or during the World Cup, you'll be able to review live tactics, positions. So this really is the future of connecting those dots.
MiHyper has also created pressure drills in VR.
Level 1.
Lucy Staniforth is shortlisted for the Women's FA Goal of the Year.
The game realisms, it's spot on. The defenders closing me, I felt real pressure. Even just fine-tuning little skills, I think some of my touches went outside the box. I was not happy with that, so even that competitive edge and sort of working on that, it's all good.
Another incredible development is being able to put yourself in any position in any game.
Obviously where Raheem is, given that he's a fast player anyway, I think that he's got the advantage. As the ball's coming in, the defender would have to sort of turn their hips and then try and clear it that way, I suppose. So.
Lucy is watching a real match that took place between Man City and Monaco. She can place herself in any position on the pitch, in the stands, on the roof, and even become the manager.
Right now I've just got a clear view of what went wrong in terms of the left-back's positioning.
So do you see more detail in the players' positioning and their bodies and things in this than you would watching back a match video?
Yeah, I think so, because you're on their level, and I think that there's so much value in actually appreciating the picture they saw.
So for the first time, this is all portable. You can bring the match analysis loaded on an SD card or USB stick onto the Vive Focus headset, put it in your bag and bring it with you. So if you're in the hotel the night before, you can be reviewing the opponent's tactics from anywhere on the pitch.
But to play against their virtual keeper, you have to be back on the wired version.
Yes, one.
So VR, especially in contact sports, it takes out any chance of injury and it's more controllable and the fatigue level can be lower. I think it's really cutting edge and we're really glad to be getting involved in that space.
Yeah, you did quite well.
Nice one, Jen. And at this year's World Cup finals in Russia, data played a bigger role than ever. Before the tournament, Paul Carter went to FIFA to find out how.
Like it or not, data is already an integral part of modern football. You can't watch a televised game without being bombarded by all kinds of statistics. For the first time, FIFA are providing an all-in-one technical package, allowing coaching staff and analysts to communicate throughout matches in real time. The snappily titled Electronic Performance and Tracking System, or EPTS, will provide data on player metrics, such as distances run, speed, and positional information. Crucially, each of the 32 countries competing in the tournament will be provided with 2 tablets. One for a data analyst in the stands, who will be able to communicate with the second device user on the bench, possibly a coach or an assistant manager.
We are using an optical tracking system, so we have optical tracking cameras in all of the stadiums. We know where the players and the ball are at any time of the match. We have different metrics available to the analysts, and it's up to them to decide how they want to use it.
With resources available for technology differing between countries, FIFA hopes this technology will bridge the data divide, bringing the digital haves closer to the digital have-nots.
A lot of the teams already use data. We are expecting a lot of the teams to come to Russia to bring their own setup. But we want to use, at least offer the same to all of the teams.
In FIFA's system, the team's data analysts will have access to a tactical app, enabling them to add drawings over a live video feed. Stills can then be sent to the dugout.
With goal line technology, video assistant referees, and now EPTS, this year's World Cup looks set to be the most technologically advanced ever. But with all this technology, how big is the risk that we lose the real spirit of the game?
The role of the data analyst is simply just to support those coaching decisions. I think there are some key insights that can be found in the data, but football will always be those 22 players on the pitch, and the coach is always going to be the person that makes the decisions.
At the end, what technology really is for is only to support. But at the end, and that's probably you're a big football fan, I'm a big football fan, at the end, the 22 players plus the referee, they're the main actors. 90 minutes. Maybe penalty shootout, Germany, England maybe. So that's the excitement, and I think technology can only add additional help, optimize processes, optimize or providing additional information. That's what technology is about.
That was Paul at FIFA, and data has also massively transformed the sport of cycling. But the epic proportions of the Tour de France make collecting data from the riders a lot more difficult than it would be in the velodrome. Kat Hawkins went to find out how one of the oldest sporting competitions in the world was solving the problem of gigantic geography.
This year's Tour de France is taking place against the same beautiful French mountains as always, but there's a big difference this year. Technology and data is playing more of a role than ever before.
Cycling is becoming increasingly data-driven, and for good reason. Masses of data can be collected, and in a sport of fine margins and superhuman endurance, those insights are the key to energy efficiency, strategy and gains.
We look at many things. We look at, obviously heart rate. We look at power data, and their maximum powers and their altitude and elevation gain. So we look at that and we see how the riders are building, and we leverage that data to try and build them to be better and stronger and, in stage races.
But how is the data collected and transmitted? That's where these little devices come in.
It may not look like much, but this small clip-on device is on the back of every bike taking part in the Tour de France this year, and it's actually been revolutionary.
The sensors on the bike send real-time location data to a nearby vehicle, which then beams up to a following helicopter. It's then sent to the data truck for real-time analytics.
And this is where the magic happens. From bike to motorbike to helicopter to here, this is where all the data for the Tour de France is being stored.
The data truck is where data is analysed, enriched and visualised for broadcasters and teams. There's even enough data for machine learning algorithms to get to work. The depth of data analytics produced from simply a GPS device is staggering. Contextual data such as 3D maps, weather, gradient, and rider information is also added to bring the data to life. During the race, riders wear earpieces, and following close behind them is the data car, where the team analyst is dissecting the data and feeding them live information.
And so what happens in here is quite an important place, isn't it?
Imagine if you have a comms office when you're trying to fly a rocket to the moon, and just have that just feel like we're that place in NASA, where all the details come in, and they come in from all directions, and then we send out one message to the riders.
Hundreds of data sets are analysed, from competitor tactics to live course conditions.
So we analyse all of the climbs, the gradients of the climbs, the road surfaces, the width of the roads, any road furniture, anything that, coming around a blind corner and there's a pedestrian crossing, and all these kinds of things we try to find. On the Tour de France, with restrictions and sponsorship deals, we don't get any heart rate and power data, but we do get location, which is absolutely crucial because we can make decisions much quicker.
Okay, so we're in the race. This is happening, this is live. What are we saying to our riders?
So we're saying, come on Serge, you've got 250 more metres hard. Round the next corner, the hairpin, you can't see it, but it flattens off for 250 metres. You'll get some respite. We've got drinks in 400 metres, so you're getting hot, cool down, take your drinks, and we've only got 10k to the finish. Good lad, keep fighting.
Yeah, nice. So I can see automatically that the psychological impact of that is huge.
But how do the cyclists themselves feel about data in their sport? Having everything about you measured and tracked can have its downsides.
Of course, a lot of teams are trying to, keep it secretive because, of course, when you're racing to win the Tour de France, you don't really want to give your competitors that advantage.
People say oh, it's now just turning into F1, it's just robots, talking to robots. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, it's more than that, A robot doesn't have to put the effort in.
Biometric data isn't actually transmitted live, but that isn't because of technical limitations.
The data ownership between the rider, the teams, the race owners is still quite complex. And so at the moment, the data that we do have permission to collect and to publish is positioning data that we can then tell stories about speed, gradient, and positioning. It is possible to take biometric data, and actually we've piloted that at the Tour of California a couple of years ago and also in a stadium environment. But for the teams it's also very sensitive because that biometric data also gives great competitive insight around how hard that rider's working to perform in the way they're doing.
As well as sponsoring their own team, Dimension Data is the technology company behind all the data collected for the Tour de France. Their technology has managed to overcome problems unique to this epic race.
We have been studying this tracking system for 15 years, 20 years. The big thing we have to deal with is we're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the mountain. The weather condition can be terrific sometimes, so this is the main thing, to be able, logistically speaking, to install the tracker every day and give information in real time. That is the most complicated thing.
From data centre to road race, there's 20 kilometres to go, 20-kilometre wind speeds. The final's coming up.
And from Cat in the Saddle to me in court. In the run-up to Wimbledon, I found myself in Boston with a little robot ball collector. The Tennybot autonomously patrols the court and collects the balls that you've lobbed, smashed, or in my case, mishit.
Now, for any ball boys and ball girls out there who are worried about their jobs, don't worry, this is not designed to replace you at tournaments. This is more for people who want to practice and who aren't very good and end up with a lot of balls in the net. So you can carry on practicing and the tennis bot will just chunter around picking the balls up while you're busy being rubbish.
Its onboard camera spots the balls and its partner at the net helps to keep track of things too. It's also got a handy detachable basket so you can easily return your balls if you have to. Then you can retire to your air-conditioned car, ball collecting bucket on wheels in tow, and no one ever will suspect that you're the laziest tennis player alive.
And that is it for this week.
Next week, we've got another chance to see our sustainability special from earlier in the year, where we'll be talking gravity trains, hurricanes, and coral reefs.
In the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at BBC Click. From Tennybots and me, see you soon.